Hi everybody, I'm Emily Baker with BuoyBox, where we craft and snack our way towards boosting our mood. And today I'm super excited to present to you our very first project. A cute little pinch pot, clay pinch pot that we'll be making in part 1 of the video. And part 2, we will be making this macrame plant hanger. So thanks for joining me. I'm super excited and I can't wait to get crafting with you. Hi guys, so before we get started, I actually wanted to give you a couple tips. I recorded this entire video, came back the next day to look at my pot, and for whatever reason, it started kind of imploding on itself, unfortunately. So I wanted to come out and say a couple things that I think we can do to prevent that, because I did not have that in the other 2 or 3 that I made before this pot. So I think one tip, be sure to mix your clays maybe up a little bit more than I did in the video. That'll help dry it out and give it kind of its own strength, right? Give it a little bit more strength. And 2, I might suggest, if you're unsure, you know, how much to mix it or not, go ahead and make your pot, and then I let mine sit like this to dry, which makes sense, right? But when I came back the next day, it was kind of imploding in the middle. So after maybe a few hours, I would check on it, if you can, if you're able to, and go ahead and push back that inside, and that'll help combat it. But I think if you kind of combat it on the front end and mixed just a little bit more than I did in the video, I think that's really gonna help out. The other thing I wanted to show you that I didn't really show you in the video, and as you can see with this project, if you wanna get a little more marbling, now that we're mixing more, I think we should go for it and marble it a little more. Go ahead and take your colors. Whoop. And as you mix them together, go ahead and pull them out, kind of like taffy. And if you feel anything in the clay that's not soft, be sure to pull that out. This is just a little bit drier clay than the rest. So keep pulling like taffy, and that'll give it a more marbled effect and help it to dry out a little more, because I don't want you guys having imploding pots. Like, I was so bummed to see that because it did not do it in my trial runs at all. So, but I think this will fix it, and it gives it this really cool effect. I definitely like this look better than this look. Although this is kind of a world look, I still do like it, but anyway, those are just my quick tips that I wanted to jump on and say before you go and watch the whole video, because I wanted to be sure and get these in so that you guys could see them and they didn't get missed at the end of the video or something. All right, so now the normal video will resume. All right, bye. So I'm really excited today. It is our first project here at BuoyBox, and it is a clay pinch pot that we're gonna make, along with a little succulent, faux succulent, which is how I roll, and some little decorative gravel for that as well. So what you'll need from your box are the 2 containers of clay. This is air dry clay, so no need for a kiln. You don't need to worry about any of that. And then you will also need eventually the rocks as well as the succulent. But you've got time. The first step is the clay. The other thing, actually, if you want to get out the toothpicks from your little packet, and of course, feel free to snack on your little raisin. If you've never had one, they're delicious. I'm not going to, because it will probably be difficult to understand me. So these are going to come in handy if you want to add any detail to your pot. I did not on this first one here, but so it's totally up to you if you do, but they're here as an option. So, oh, the other thing you might need, I am on, it's kind of dusty there. I am on poster board, which is not ideal for clay, but the table underneath this is has like a texture to it, so I definitely didn't want to use that either. We will kind of be, you don't have to have a smooth surface to roll this out, it's not necessary, but just a heads up to you, it might be helpful if you do want it to get it really smooth, to have something nearby. Or actually your top might be just fine. The top you have, your desktop, tabletop, whatever you're at, might be smooth enough and just fine. I'm going to use the back of a lid of those, you know, those storage bins, but whatever you have, cutting board or whatever. So sometimes I've noticed on these clay pots here, or these clay containers, is a little bit of the clay has gotten outside of the lid and has dried. So just pick that off before you start mixing it in. It's easier that way if you run into that. My daughter already got into this one. She couldn't resist. And then you're going to take both colors and mix them together. What I recommend is you can mix them together until they're a complete different color, but actually it's kind of nice to have a little bit of marbling. This one has a very subtle marbling. It's hard to tell because the colors were so similar, but it's nice that way. And actually, the less you mix it together, the better for this type of clay, because it starts to dry out. You can use a little bit of water to re-wet this clay. Just do it very sparingly. I usually just kind of get my fingertips wet to introduce the water, because otherwise you can end up with kind of a sloppy mess, and you don't want that, of course. You want to try and minimize the seams, the folds in the clay, like where this would fold down, it would make a pretty big seam. So try to minimize that. I know that sounds kind of weird, but it is helpful in the end. It minimizes the folds in the pot as well in your finished product. Okay, so you just keep working it and rolling it. Oh, it looks like earth, like a backwards earth. Way more land than sea. So work it into a ball, and once you have your final ball, you go ahead and take your thumb and push it in the center. Pretty deep. You don't want to go out through the other side, and you do want to leave some thickness at the bottom. And then you just start pinching together slightly, gently, and work your way around the pot. And really the clay is kind of at this part of my fingers rather than here. I'm not making little motions. I'm putting my thumb in as far as it'll go, basically, and the clay is hitting here. And you kind of want to move it up this direction. I'm exaggerating, but rather than just making it really wide, you want to focus on making it tall. So just keep working your way around. Equal pressure, best you can. And you're gonna see kind of the ripples and stuff from your fingertips, and that's okay. One, you could leave it like that, but two, in the end, that's what that lid is for that I have, that smooth surface, to kind of smooth some of that away. So you can also look in your pot, and I can see that there's not really a defined wall yet. It's very shallow, it's very angled. So you can take your thumb and just kind of slowly push that out a little bit. Just be cautious that when you're pushing it out, you don't start making your pot really wide. And worst case scenario, if you end up with a really wide pot, that's okay too. It's just some of the succulents have these long stems. So as long as your stem fits in, you're good. And if you don't like it that way, you can always put it in a ball and start over. You just don't want to do that too many times because it really starts to kind of get overworked and dried. If you start over, you might have to add some water to it. Just remember not to add too much water because you'll have a big old mess on your hands. You can kind of take this in your hands and pat it down on the bottom to create more of a flat base. Start introducing that flatness to it. And just keep working your way around. Try to make this edge as equal as you can all the way around. You don't want one really thin side and one really thick side. So be on the lookout for that as you're working around your little pot. So as you get bigger, as the pot gets bigger, you can switch. Obviously my thumb's not in there anymore. And you can start moving it up towards your fingertips because you're kind of slowly raising the clay up towards the top. So that is getting pretty close to the size I'm looking for, the look I'm looking for. So I'll probably work on smoothing it out just a little bit. So let me get my nifty here's my nifty surface here for smoothing out. What I do is I put my fingers inside and then I roll it gently. Actually, I usually just use one. I just roll it gently and it smooths out that outside as well as the inside. I think it just gives it a nice finish. But you absolutely can skip this step. If you want it, a little bit more rustic looking, or you just don't have, the capability to do this right now, that's okay too. Maybe you don't have the right surface. And you could try it on a textured surface. It could give a really neat look to your pot. It's just, I don't want your clay, I don't want the clay sticking to that surface and then, then you guys are like, what the heck? Thanks a lot, Emily. So you can also take it and flip it and kind of pat it gently to flatten out this edge. I did mush it a little too hard on one spot as I was rolling it, so I'm trying to kind of even that out a little bit. Also just making this a little bit whiter at the bottom. There, I think that's about right. Whoop. See if we can smooth that little blip out. There we go. All right. So go ahead and put it on your table or your countertop here and gently kind of work it so that it's not super lopsided, like leaning to one side. Just kind of push it around gently until you feel that it's more sturdy and it has that nice sturdy base to it. I think that's about right. I'm happy with that. So what you can do is you can leave it just like this, or you could take one of your toothpicks from your pack and create little designs on it. You could do chevrons, or I mean, you could do anything. I'm doing it when it's fairly wet. You might want to wait a little bit until it starts hardening, because once you have it to a state that you like, you're just going to let it sit for a couple days, and then it just air dries. So you don't want to wait too long to do this, but if you waited maybe an hour or so, this might be a little bit easier, and you don't have to like worry about mushing it so much. But I am going to show you now what you can do. So really, if you're used to working with more traditional clay at all, this is definitely not that clay. So more traditional clay, you can kind of just drag your tools through it. This clay, you almost have to like stamp it, because once you start dragging it, I don't know, it just doesn't drag well. You'll see if you try to do it. And if you're not comfortable doing this, or you're not sure you want to do it, you're not sure you want to try it on your own pot, you could always try on the bottom and kind of see how it does and reacts, and see if you like that. And if you do, then you can go for it. So I'm kind of just taking the toothpick at an angle and almost plopping it down or stamping it down. And then once I have that, I kind of smooth it out just a little bit more if I can. But I also kind of like it just this way. It gives it almost a stitched feeling, which is really interesting. Keep working your way around. Like I said, you could do like these little chevron kind of looks, or you could do circles or squares, or you know, like little confetti looking things. I mean, it's really whatever you want to do. I think I'm going to add another layer. Yeah, I like that. Gives a little bit of that pillowed effect in the middle, which is really neat. And it's going to make it stand out. You know, it's so tiny. Some of this is going to be hard to see once it's in our little macrame plant hanger, which is the next project. So if it's a little bit bolder, I think that's probably better in this case. There. So I have the little design. You can see that there. And then before I leave it to dry, I like to just double check and see if there's any, you know, really goofy kind of bumps or something that are bugging me. straighten those out or smooth those out, and then I put it down like this and just make sure that it is sturdy, because you don't want it to dry and it can't even stand up. Because if you're using the macrame plant hanger, it's really not that big of a deal, I suppose, if it's, you know, able to stand up on its own. But if you decide not to do that or use that for something else, obviously you want your little pot to be able to stand up straight. So there, that concludes this guy. Yeah. So once that dries, what I will do, I'll show you guys with this other pot. So like I said, leave this out, this little pot out for probably 2 days, and then it should be pretty dry. Once it's dry, then you can add your decorative rock and plant. So if you want to grab your little bag, if you have a long stemmed succulent, it's a little bit trickier than if you have these short guys. What I do, if you have this long guy, is I put the rocks in. I put a good handful in, and I fill up one side. Can you guys see that? There. So I fill up one side, then I stick this guy in, and then I fill up the other side. Because I found if I put the rocks in, and then I try to jam the stem in for these long ones, it just does not work. I cannot get them in. And if I put this guy down first and then put the rocks in, I'm like taking forever putting one rock in at a time. So that was the best solution I've come up with, is to do it that way. If you have this short one, you can usually put the rocks in first and then just kind of, you know, wiggle this down until it's into the rock and it can sit there. So there's this little guy again, and I will do that once this dries, but otherwise we are done with this project. You just gotta let it dry. I also wanted to mention, be sure to log on the Facebook group and share your beautiful project with one another and cheer each other on. And if you have any questions, I'll be on there as well. And the name of that is Mini BuoyBox Hangout. It is on your little card insert, but if you happen to lose that, just go to Mini BuoyBox, B-U-O-Y box, and that is one word. Mini BuoyBox Hangout, and we will see you there, and I can't wait to see what you guys have produced. I can't wait to see your creations. So for the next project, I will show you how to make the macrame hanger. But I had fun making this one. I hope you guys did too, and I will see you at the next video. All right, take care. Bye.